At 6 in the morning, I stood at my front gate watching two bulldozers idle on my pasture diesel fumes, mixing with hay, while the president of the Homeowners Association stepped out of her Audi and told me my ranch was finished. She said it calmly, like she was reading the weather. What she didn't know, what nobody there knew, was that everything she was pointing at was a decoy. My name is Mason Hart, and that land behind me had been in my family since 1952. Not a hobby farm, not a weekend escape, a working cattle ranch that paid bills, fed people, and kept 4 generations rooted in the same dirt. I wasn't rich, but I was steady, and in rural Colorado. Steady usually means left alone. That changed when Willowbrook Estates showed up. Perfect lawns, identical mailboxes, vinyl fences so white they looked offended by dust. Most of the new neighbors were fine families, kids, people who waved. But every place like that grows a ruler eventually. Her name was Linda Carver, former corporate attorney, newly self-appointed guardian of community standards, and within 6 months president of the HOA. She lived nearly 1,000 feet from my closest pasture and still decided the smell of cattle was a personal attack. The first complaint arrived by certified mail. Livestock odors, property value concerns, a threat of further action. I didn't panic. I pulled zoning maps, agricultural exemptions, grandfather clauses older than her house. My land predated Willowbrook by decades, and the law was clear. Linda wasn't interested in clear. She was interested in control. Next came the nuisance lawsuit. Health risks, noise pollution, claims that my cattle were a danger to children who'd never stepped foot on my land. Then the emergency HOA meeting. Rows of folding chairs filled with people who'd bought homes next to a ranch and decided ranching was the problem. Linda stood at the front heels, clicking voice smooth talking about safety, while pointing at me like I was leaking poison. The local paper loved it. They ran a headline painting me as a stubborn old rancher blocking progress. Nobody asked to see my permits. A temporary restraining order landed 2 weeks later. 500 feet of buffer zone carved out of my own pasture. I had to sell 8 head of cattle at auction, fast, cheap, painful. Money I'd counted on vanished in a single morning. Linda watched from her kitchen window. Didn't wave, didn't hide the smile. That was the first time I felt it. Not anger, not fear, just a hollow pressure in my chest that told me this wasn't about compromise. This was about wearing me down. Inspectors started showing up. Environmental, health, zoning. Always polite, always apologetic, always there because of an anonymous concern. Then the septic notice came. 30 days to upgrade to a commercial-grade system or face shutdown. $18,000 I didn't have. That permit had expired while my wife was dying. Hospital rooms paperwork, shoved aside priorities narrowed to a single bed and a steady heartbeat. Linda found it anyway. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that letter, cold coffee in my hands, and for the first time I thought, not emotionally, not dramatically, this might actually end me. Not in some tragic sense, just practically. Bills don't care about legacy. Courts don't care about grief. For a week I moved slower. Fed cattle, fixed fences, answered letters. No speeches, no pep talks. Then something shifted. Not inspiration, clarity. Linda was using rules as weapons, which meant rules were fair game. I went to the county records office and started pulling everything connected to her property. Setbacks, lighting ordinances, environmental permits. Violations stacked up faster than I expected. A stone fence built 6 feet over the line. Landscape lighting illegal under dark sky rules. A decorative pond without permits. I filed 3 complaints, quietly, cleanly. Linda got her first notice a week later, then another, then a third. She called me screaming. Left voicemails accusing me of harassment, sabotage, intimidation. I didn't respond. 2 days later, her husband knocked on my door. Mark Carver looked like a man who hadn't slept. He told me the truth. They were leveraged deep. The house stretched their finances. Thin property values mattered more than anything. That explained the desperation. It didn't excuse it. While Linda scrambled, I kept digging. Old surveys, territorial maps, documents so old they smelled like dust and ink. That's when I found it. Mineral rights. Subsurface ownership dating back to the 1890s. Never transferred, never extinguished. My great-grandfather had been thorough. Those rights ran under the entire Willowbrook development. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just understood. Linda thought she was fighting a tired rancher bleeding cash. She had no idea she was standing on ground I legally controlled. When the county flagged Willowbrook's planned expansion due to unresolved subsurface claims, the panic started. Emails flew. HOA meetings turned ugly. Questions people hadn't asked before suddenly mattered. Linda accused me of blackmail, of extortion, of holding the neighborhood hostage. I said nothing publicly. She escalated. Anonymous IRS tip. Tax audit. Another lawyer I couldn't afford. Then the midnight inspection. Sheriff's cruiser. Flashlights across my pasture. Everything checked out. A flyer showed up on my fence the next morning. Protect our community. Meeting scheduled for Friday night. I went. The clubhouse was packed. Linda stood at the front, polished, furious, holding herself together with muscle memory and pride. She talked about safety, about fairness, about one man threatening an entire neighborhood. When someone asked about the canceled expansion, the room shifted. When they asked about HOA funds, it tilted. I stood up, didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse. I laid out facts. The restraining order, the forced auction, the inspections, the permits discovered during chemotherapy appointments. When I mentioned the mineral rights, I explained them plainly. No threats, no drama. Silence settled hard. Someone asked Linda directly if HOA money had been used for lawsuits. She didn't answer. The meeting ended early. By Monday, Linda resigned from the board. By Friday, their house was listed. The county dropped the nuisance actions. The audit closed. The bulldozers never came back. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post a victory message. I went back to work. Linda left town quietly a month later. No apology, no explanation. Power doesn't scream when it dies. It just disappears. The lesson was simple. If someone tries to erase you with rules, don't get louder. Get deeper. After Linda left, things didn't magically get quiet. They just got honest. No more inspectors pretending they were just doing their job. No more envelopes designed to scare before you opened them. The pressure was gone, and the absence of it felt heavier than I expected. A few neighbors started waving again. Not the performative kind, the kind where people actually look you in the eye. Someone dropped off a note thanking me for standing my ground like they'd been holding their breath the whole time. I didn't respond. I wasn't looking for validation. What stayed with me wasn't the victory, or even the relief. It was how close everything came to disappearing, because one person decided rules were toys. Not laws, not protections, toys to swing at whoever didn't fit her picture. I learned something standing out there one evening, leaning on the fence as the sun dropped behind the pasture. Land doesn't care about titles. It doesn't recognize authority votes or HOA letterhead. It only remembers who stays, who works, who understands it well enough to defend it without shouting. And when someone tries to take your ground by force of paperwork and fear, the strongest move isn't to fight harder, it's to know exactly where you stand and refuse to move.